morning, people. Welcome back to F Politics. In today's episode of Tory Fascism, Michael Gove announced the government's new definition of extremism, but spent the rest of the day proving that that definition covers his own government.
The proposed definition will hold that extremism is the promotion or advancement of an ideology based on violence, hatred, or intolerance.
Let me stop you right there. This government has already referred to people who protest against the genocide in Gaza as hate marches. So they've already made it clear that anything that goes against the government's own wishes, they'll categorize as hatred, which means that this definition potentially categorizes any criticism of the government as extremism. But carry on.
That aims to negate or destroy the fundamental rights and freedoms of others, or undermine, overturn, or replace the UK system of liberal parliamentary democracy and democratic rights.
Do you mean like a government that's trying to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, repeal the Human Rights Act, and last year prevented 14,000 people from voting in what Jacob Rees-Mogg himself admitted was a deliberate attempt to suppress votes? If that's what you're calling extremism, we might have some agreement. But this is the bit where he really prosecutes himself over the stuff that he said earlier in the day.
Or intentionally create a permissive environment for others to achieve these results.
So if you create an environment that makes it okay to have hatred, intolerance, and violence, then you fall under the definition of extremism? Interesting.
When Frank Hestor allegedly said that, and I want to get this quote right, "I don't hate all black women at all, but I think she should be shot." Is that an extremist view?
Well, I take these things exceptionally seriously, and because I take them seriously, it would be the case that any assessment about whether or not an individual or an organisation is extremist would have to follow a rigorous process. It wouldn't be me making a decision on the basis of a quote, however horrific. It would be a due diligence process that would be conducted very carefully.
And it would be down to the government of the time, which you are part of, yes?
Yes, and thank you, Nagam and Chatty, for being awesome there. Now yes, that was essentially a non-answer to what was a very easy question, but this next bit is worse, because it's about the apology that Frank Hestor made about his comments about Diane Abbott.
Which said the comments he made were not based on race. The Prime Minister has said they were racist. Presumably that, therefore, is not a sufficient or genuine apology.
I believe it is a genuine apology. I haven't spoken to him, but I understand that he has shown real contrition over those remarks. And my inclination is that when someone apologises, and apologises sincerely, as I understand he has, to accept that apology.
Look, accepting that apology, even though Frank Hestor has refused to apologise for the racism and denies that it was racist at all, is kind of like, let me think, it's like if I stole a car and drove it into a nursery, and then you arrested me and sentenced me to prison, but only for the fact that I was driving without a license, then you're effectively acting like stealing a car and driving into a nursery isn't a crime. So accepting Frank Hestor's apology for the rudeness in his comments, even though he hasn't accepted or apologised for the violent racism in his comments, acts as if violent racism is something that's okay. To use your own words, you're creating a permissive environment for extremism. And given that this new definition applies specifically to who the government should and should not be having financial dealings with, continuing to be funded by and give government contracts to Frank Hestor after what he's done means you're violating this new law before you've even passed it. And when Angela Rayner asked Michael Gove whether they would be expanding the definition of extremism to who the police treats as extremists, he refused to answer the question. And given that he almost bluntly admitted that the definition of extremism is basically anybody he doesn't like...
So they can have free speech?
Yes.
But if you don't like it, you won't fund them anymore?
Yes.
This should be raising alarm bells for all of us. I'm Femi. Make sure you follow F Politics if politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.